So we're going to kind of do this drawing in a couple of phases here. Let's get started. Okay. Cool. So here we've got the image. I'm going to set it out right next to my paper. That should be kind of helpful for replicating it. I'm going to do it about the same size because these are about the same size. Depending on your screen, you might be doing an enlargement or an ensmallening. I don't know what that's really called. So let's start out by just kind of doing a little sketch and kind of planning out where everything's going to be. So for our sketch phase here, we really just want to think about like what are the important markers, what are the important landmarks on this? And that's all we're really trying to figure out. So I might think about where's the top of the head here? Where's the chin going to be? I'm just kind of marking. It doesn't necessarily have to make sense to anybody else. I just have to be able to figure out what's going on. Side of the face, other side of the face. Just kind of getting a general layout of the image in space here. And this should be like pretty quick if you want to kind of sketch out where the facial features are going to be. This might be my mark for my eye level. I might think about where the center line is, right? It's a little off center. He's turned a little bit to our left. Just kind of a general simple map of the image. Alright, so we want to make that quick and easy. The next thing we want to do is start looking at shadows. So for this step we want to kind of squint and really kind of simplify the image as best we can and just kind of look at the shape of those shadows. Now I'm only really concerned with the dark shadows here, so the shadow coming through here down through here, okay? Maybe this one over here. So I'm not really worried about any of the halftones, I just want to get the shadow. So I'm going to start just using the side of my pencil to block that shadow shape in. And I don't necessarily want to go super dark right away. I can kind of start with the shadow being kind of lighter and then darken it in once I'm kind of laying it down and figuring out exactly where it's going to be. Let's see where that ear is going to be. It's going to kind of come out here and here and maybe have this shape here. A little less right there. Alright, block that in. We've got the hair here. The hair's all going to be pretty dark. got our shadow shape coming down here. We've got kind of a curve like this. And I'm just going to go ahead and include the forehead here in the shadow. Alright, forehead, you're in. Alright. Okay, and I wanted to get over here too, I said. So this looks like it almost comes down straight from the neck here. Got the neck up here, and then this kind of comes down straight from there. It's actually a pretty straight line. I got a little bit of an elbow right there. Alright, now let's kind of shape the shadow a little bit. So I'm going to roll onto the tip of my pencil just a little bit here and start shaping that. Kind of rolls this way. See kind of a curve here, and then a point, and then another kind of curve out. We can get a little darker as we start to shape this and have a better, sort of more specific idea of where these shadows are going to be. We want to try to avoid making anything real dark that we're going to have to erase. So we can see there's kind of a round shape to the chin here. Kind of comes around like this. The shadow shape. We got the philtrum, or not philtrum. Got this area under the lip right here. And then let's kind of sketch in some of this maybe. Nose is going to end about here, I think. So yeah. Shadow under the nose, we'll have right here. And here's our philtrum. Losing some of that. Okay, that's okay. Just kind of shaping it. Not going to worry about that eye too much right now. I really mainly want to focus on simple shadow shapes for now. Let's fix this. Fix this in here. Okay, so this comes around. Here's the top, here's the upper lip shadow. And the lower lip shadow is going to come like this. Yeah, that looks about right. Okay. And then this will go up into that nose shape. We'll just start an indication of that nostril here. Won't worry too much about the detail. These kind of join together. Alright. You can see on this side here we've got a little bit of reflected light. Or maybe you can't see that, you can't see too much. Actually, this is doing a really good job of simplifying the shadow on my iPad there. It actually gets pretty light up here. I feel like my hair is a little bit off here. Let's work on the rest of the head a little bit. I feel like I need to drop this chin a little bit. This is a good example here of how to draw an ear and keeping it simple so that you don't have too much going on. You don't get lost in the detail of the ear. So it's a complex shape. There's a lot going on in there, but if you work it too much, you can get lost in that detail. That's not good. Just gonna get that tie here. We're probably not going to have enough time to get a great copy, so no pressure. Don't worry too much about it. Just try to work the process. It's just for the activity itself, not really for the final product. Final product's probably not going to be complete. So there's less pressure. The other thing we got to think about while we're doing this is do you want to copy the actual image, or is it more important to copy the sort of energy of it and the method? What I mean by that is you can duplicate an image perfectly, or nearly perfectly, or to whatever degree you can, if you're working really slowly, right? But if we're working on copying something that's fast and energetic, is it more important to get that speed and energy, or is it more important to get an exact duplicate? So if you do it slowly, you could argue that you made a copy, but in another way you kind of failed to because you didn't do it the same way it was done. So it's kind of a process versus product idea. So we have to ask, are we copying the process or the product? And with something that's fast, maybe a little less meticulous, it's maybe impossible to do both. I need to put my iPad on Do Not Disturb. Nothing scandalous though. Unfortunately, I'm pretty boring. Okay. So after we've kind of got our loose sketch in and our shadows blocked in, what we can do is start adding the kind of details to it. So I'm working a little bit differently than maybe usual, or maybe you're used to. Where I want to block in the shadows first and kind of get the big tonal shapes in here, and then I want to go in and get the details. And a lot of that has to do with the way you work with charcoal. You'll start with the charcoal, or the vine charcoal, which is kind of this I mean, it's what it sounds like. It's a vine. So it's kind of a thinner piece of charcoal, and it's very soft, and it's good for blocking shadows, but it's not very good for getting details. But you want to start with that first, just to kind of get everything into the right place, but also to block in the values. And then with the charcoal drawing, we usually finish with our kind of details. So we'll come back in with the charcoal pencil, and the charcoal pencil gives us finer details. Now the problem with the charcoal pencil is it's not great at what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, it's hard to talk and draw at the same time. It's not great at being erased or smudging, being able to move around. So when we're doing the shadows and blocking those in, we're using a material that can be kind of moved around pretty freely. And you can kind of just smudge it with your fingers fairly easily. You can move it around with a paintbrush or whatever. There's lots of different ways to move it around. But then we're going to a material that isn't going to move around very easily. So before we want to lay down that material that isn't going to move around very easily, we want to have a good idea of where it's going to go. So we block in those shadows first and make sure that they're accurate and look good before we get in with the more permanent material. It's a lot like, in a lot of ways, like sketching and then inking afterwards. So you start with a sketch because it's in pencil and you can erase it, and then you ink it afterwards. Because that material is permanent, and the sketch gives you an idea of where everything needs to go. Gives you a pretty good plan for that. A little shadow under the nose here. Underside there. So all throughout here, throughout the light areas, we've got a lot of halftones we need to be paying attention to. So the halftones are the areas that are not shadows and not highlights. But you can see in the drawing how all the shadows sort of merge together. He doesn't really have like an outline on his lips or his eyes. It's just kind of shadow shapes that make everything up. There we go. That's popping a little bit. And it's kind of interesting working this way, at least for me, because everything kind of is wrong at a certain point. And then you kind of keep working it. Eventually things like just kind of pop into place and it works. And it's like a little magic trick you do for yourself. Kind of all popping into place to start to anyway. So similarly, even though we're using pencil, once you start like really digging into the paper and adding those details, it digs little trenches and furrows. So we want to start with like the side of our pencil and slowly work towards using the tip, and save the tip for when we are pretty confident that we have things laid in pretty well. Kind of smudge this a little bit. So another thing, kind of as you're working, if things are a little off, you can kind of smudge it together to soften it and simplify it, and then make another run at it. A lot of times that can be really useful. You slowly kind of build up consensus on where everything is. So you can probably see on your example sheet we've got a little bit of reflected light here. So that's one of the tricky things in the shadows. Sometimes there'll be like some reflected light. So there's some kind of object over on this side that's bouncing the light that's coming in this way back onto him. And it's always like just kind of a slight highlight in the shadow. So you'll notice on his right eye, on our left side, you can't really see a lot of details. So I think a lot of people want to kind of resolve and spell out everything in their drawings, so they'll invent details and kind of make up what's going on there based on what they know about anatomy. But that's usually a mistake. It's usually better to just kind of record the shadow that exists there instead of trying to spell out every detail. So I think a good piece of advice that I got back in the day was the more detail you put into a drawing, the more you have to be right about what you're drawing. So you should only draw detail to the level of your own ability to be accurate. And that's kind of different for all of us, you know. Some people can really go pretty far with the details, and some of us have to figure out how to be sort of concise and elegant. But there's a place for all of it, you know. One approach isn't necessarily any more valid than the other. You can definitely have really powerful paintings or drawings with less detail. It often feels like I'm laying pigment into the same places over and over again. I think that's just kind of the way it goes sometimes. Redefining all this stuff I already did. think that's gonna call that for today. That's 30 minutes. I think that's reasonable. So yeah, I mean, the main thing I want to get at is kind of this method of working and the system of approach. So as long as you're practicing that, I'm not really super concerned what your results are. I just want you to be kind of doing it this way, so we can move forward and work on painting stuff soon. Because I don't know, this is an important first step in the painting process, and it's really important to kind of work on your drawing, because there's nothing more frustrating than working on a painting and realize you made a drawing error early on and you've got all this work to undo. It's really a pain, and kind of chasing the rabbit the wrong way for a long time. It's kind of frustrating. So anyway.